It's a pleasure to welcome to All Mixed Up this morning Bill Janovitz, his brand new book, The Cars Let the Stories Be Told. Bill, good morning and welcome to WDHA and All Mixed Up.
Good morning, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Um, I'm familiar, of course, with the band as we all are. That debut album of theirs still sounds fresh nearly 50 years later. What was it for you that stood out from that first album?
Well, I mean, if for me, I guess it would have to be the first song because that's what I heard first. I had a friend. I was 12 years old. I had a friend whose older brother brought that record home from college before we even knew anything about them, and at least this is my memory of it. But just dropping the needle on "Good Times Roll" was sort of like made a big, deep impression, such that it sort of starts the book for me.
That's almost like a greatest hits album because it was one track after another. And even all these years later, that album still sounds as fresh today as the day it was released.
Yeah, for sure. And they refer to it half jokingly, maybe not even half jokingly, more, as their greatest hits record. And it's a timeless bunch of songs, first of all, but it's a timeless production thanks to the sonics of their it was the first of four records that in a row that they did with Roy Thomas Baker, who was already a legend for doing Queen and other things by then.
His production on the album, I mean, you hear the vocals and you can kind of hear that Queen thing. It reminds me a little bit, Bill, of Rick Rubin and the way that Rick was able to take one artist after another in different genres and still work with them, whether it was Johnny Cash or a rap artist or Tom Petty. He adjusted his style to the musician he was working with, and that seemed to, at least to my ears, what Roy Thomas Baker did.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting comparison. I mean, they were both. Well, let's take this record anyway with Roy it's they both use sort of a dry, naturalistic sort of production style. They were basically, like you said, just sort of capturing what was there in the room. I mean, it's funny to think of Roy Thomas Baker that way because he came out of this grandiosity that was known as those, Bohemian Rhapsody, for example, which was just so over the top. But he saw an opportunity with the Cars to actually pare it down a little bit and to actually only use. I kind of visualize it like a poodle, you know. You get this trimmed down section, and all of a sudden it explodes, into a big puffy thing. So that's what he did with the vocals. So it's that sort of contrast that really brought out the best of the Cars.
As I was reading through the early parts of the book, I'm going back and I'm finding some of the bands that you were referencing that Rick had been in and Ben had been in. And I listened to Rick, and it's this kind of folky thing that he had going on, a cross between the Velvets and maybe Bob Dylan. Ben Orr, there were a couple of things I found that sounded like a cross between Dion and the Belmonts and Tommy James and the Shondells. You get two guys with Berkeley influence. How did all of that meld into the Cars?
Yeah, well, it took about 100 and something pages of the book to sort of get there, like it's a bunch of the trying on different things and their stops and starts and their false starts or whatever. All of those guys, it's sort of a little overview of what was going on from the late 60s to what became sort of post-punk. And it really was punk rock, I think, that brought everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people back to their senses musically, right? But it also presented a great opportunity for these guys that, like you said, they went through various hippie kind of sort of moments, and they tried on like jazz rock stuff, and like the guys that went to Berkeley were, maybe trained in all kinds of stuff, but it was really punk rock that brought like a distillation of these things to bring it back to like classic songwriting structures, very small. If you're going to have guitar solos, they're going to be composed and kind of and short. I'm not saying that punk rock was like that, but it's the economy of punk rock, really kind of eschewing the bombast of like prog rock and things like that. But yeah, for it's funny because they were, though their ages were well hidden by design. Rick was older than Ron Wood, for example, of the Stones, and the Stones were being questioned for some girls, like, are these guys still around? Are they too old to make rock and roll music? But here was this band that came out of nowhere. So yeah, I think. I think these guys looked at it as a great opportunity to kind of latch on to something new. Plus, you got the great synths of Greg Hawkes. You've got the classic guitar playing, like beautiful solos that inspired by George Harrison and others from Elliot Easton. So it was just a magical combo. And the drummer, David Robinson, who had already done sort of a local legend here, if not more of an international. Actually, by the time they came out, he was almost sort of an international legend because the Sex Pistols covered Modern Lovers' Roadrunner, which was David Robinson on the drums.
You know, you point out there's a part of the book where I really identified with. You point out about the Cars coming out of that new wave punk, if you will, scene. And for those of us who didn't get Devo, we got the Cars. And I was in that category. I couldn't get into Devo for whatever reason it was, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, Devo was like, I just remember watching them on SNL and doing the deconstructed version of Satisfaction and just thinking, this is the one of the greatest. I can't believe this works. This is and plus the visual presentation was just spot on for like a pre-adolescent or adolescent kid. It was just like, this is fantastic. Because when you're 12, 13 years old, your mind is wide open, like my first record that I bought was Stevie Wonder. And then I'm going back and listening to Highway 61 by Dylan, a record I was handed to when I was 8. It's like you're listening to everything. But the Cars and Devo for me, when you're 12, 13 years old, it's like, this is for me. This is contemporaneous. I'm not going back and finding new things. But yeah, the Cars were adept at, much like the Beatles were, at smuggling in these sort of underground influences, and presenting them to the mainstream as something nicely packaged. And they were criticized for it amongst from some of the hipper critics and bands, but they pulled it off. I mean, much like Nirvana did later on. I mean, the people that are most successful usually are the people that take those great strands of influences and present it as something new and them and palatable.
One of the other names that comes up a lot in the book is actually someone I had a chance to work with for a few years at WNEW-FM in New York, and that is Maxan Sartori, who is such a huge part of the Cars story, whether as a DJ at the legendary BCN in Boston or working with a record label.
For sure, yeah. And Maxine has been a bit of a recluse over the last bunch of years, but she's come out a couple times, and thankfully for this book, she came out for the book launch the other night at Berkeley Performance Center here in Boston, and she was rightfully applauded for her roles. I mean, she almost single-handedly broke not only the Cars, which she was playing their demo early on before they had a record deal on the highly influential WBCN here in Boston, groundbreaking station. But she had also broken Aerosmith, and she had a big hand in breaking Queen and Springsteen as well. I mean, back when the male jocks were like, she said, they were just whining about how Springsteen just sounded like he was trying to imitate Bob Dylan. She recognized talent, and she didn't suffer fools, nor does she suffer fools today.
I know listeners are going to know you through the books that you've written, most recently one on Leon Russell, a couple of Stones books. They know you, of course, from Buffalo Tom. What they may not know is that you're a real estate agent. How did that come about?
Well, in America, a lot of people get their real estate licenses, and for me it was 10 years plus on the road in a band. Graduated school in 89, was on the road at least until 99, really kind of still on the road, but not like today I'm still on the road. I just got back from Spain playing with Buffalo Town, but it's not like we go out for months and months like we used to. So but at a certain point in 99 specifically, my first child arrived, and as did the band. Tom, had a couple of kids by that point, so it's like, well, now what do we do? Do we want to keep doing this and being out on the road for years? We weren't a gigantic success. We were moderately and happily successful, but we would have had to stay on the road. So it was like, okay, well, here's my resume: 10 years at a rock, 10 years at a rock band. And I was always interested in this kind of thing, and I specialize in mid-century modern homes around the Boston area, of which there are quite a few, contrary to probably most people's perceptions. So it's been a great way to make a living for sure.
The book is called The Cars, Let the Stories Be Told, and there are many great stories in the book. Bill Janovitz, thanks for your time this morning and best of luck with the book.
Hey, Jim, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.